This is Colin O'Keefe for LXPN TV. Hydraulic fracturing has been in the news frequently during President Barack Obama's first term in office, but not always for the best reasons. Joining me today to discuss what Obama's second term in office could mean for this energy extraction practice is Wayne DeAngelo of Kelley Drye and their blog, Fracking Insider. Wayne, first off, at a high level, what are some of the biggest developments you expect to see in hydraulic fracturing during President Obama's second term in office?
Thanks, Colin. It's a good question. I think to look at the next 4 years, you got to sort of look back at the first 4 years. People have speculated that it's going to be an intensive period of regulatory activity, and I'd submit that the first 4 years were as well. With this in mind, we look to the second term, and there's a couple things that we certainly know. There is a proposed BLM rule out there. And we expect that they will finalize this rule for regulation of hydraulic fracturing activities on federal land. The new source performance standards have been finalized. They were last term, but they're challenged. So we expect this administration is going to work through those challenges, either through the litigation or if there are opportunities for settlement with any of the number of parties that have sued, they'll be working hard on that as well. The TSCA petition, like I said, was partially granted. The administration, EPA in particular, is going to be coming forward with a advance notice of proposed rulemaking. It's due this month. It may push out to early next year, but it looks like EPA will move forward with the TSCA rulemaking. And also due this month are some interim findings from that EPA report. The final report's not due to 2014, but they have announced and have intended from the beginning that they will come forward and do an interim report. Again, they're shooting for this month. That may push out a month or so. The unknowns are what a lot of us in the regulatory advocacy community are really looking at. EPA has received a lot of petitions for additional rulemaking from environmentalist and activist groups. Not as conspicuously as some of the major rules like the refinery and utility air emission standards. These have been sort of put on the back burner till after 2012. I think this administration has recognized astutely that places like Pennsylvania and Ohio, where a lot of hydraulic fracturing activity is going on, were important to the election and wanted to make sure they were very careful about how they were regulating going up into the election. So there's requests for additional rulemaking under RCRA. There is a petition to regulate, to require increased emissions reporting under TRI. There actually has another petition out there, FIFRA. It's one of the best named environmental statutes out there. It's the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. There are biocides that are used in hydraulic fracturing fluids, and there are those out there that think they should be regulated under FIFRA for that. So there's a lot of these petitions out there. How the administration approaches them is very much an open question.
Second, even though we haven't seen conclusive evidence on these things, groundwater contamination and earthquakes are scary things often associated with fracking, and state and local governments have been quick to act in restricting hydraulic fracturing as a result. We've seen this in places like Colorado and Ohio. How can the federal government and even state ones work with the local governments to balance the concerns of the people and the oil and gas industry?
Well, it's a great question, and the way I look at it first and foremost is that you're right. There are a lot of scary stories out there about hydraulic fracturing. I do think a lot of them are sort of misplaced, and as time goes on, as more information has become available, we're seeing that a lot of these scary impacts are not attributable to hydraulic fracturing. There's been over 1 million wells drilled and that have been hydraulically fracked. It's been used for over 60 years. This is not new technology. And there's never been a case of groundwater contamination by hydraulic fracturing. Nonetheless, there's a perception out there, and industry, I think, recognizes they have a perception problem. stepping back to why they have a perception problem, I think a big part of that is there's lots of activity going on. There is lots of hydraulic fracturing activity. Oftentimes now it is happening in regions that are unaccustomed to oil and gas operations. Pennsylvania, for instance, has not seen significant oil and gas operations before the Marcellus boom for over a century. Same thing with Ohio. These operations also are happening closer into communities, unlike a lot of the oil and gas operations that are traditionally known in the West. I think the way to strike the balance between federal, state, and local is to sort of recognize what the states have done and the fact that they've been very, very successful so far. There is a sort of a Goldilocks scenario here for regulation that, at the federal level, they can't really set regulations that reflect the local hydrology and the local geology. And local, or the states have the ability to recognize that, and they have, and they've been very successful so far. They've got the most experience regulating, and they've got a really good track record. Like I said, there's not been an instance of groundwater contamination caused by hydraulic fracturing. And they are regulating. I mean, the big misinformation here is that we need federal regulation because the states aren't doing anything, and that's absolutely false. You mentioned seismic activity, and I'll talk about that briefly. There is no hydraulic fracturing link to earthquakes. It's the underground injection and storage of frac fluid and other waste that has been tied to some seismic activity. That being said, places like Ohio have said they've recognized it. They are the primary regulator there. They had some seismic activity that occurred around New Year's Eve last year. They did a formal and an informal moratorium on permits for these underground injection control wells. And when they crafted their hydraulic fracturing regulations, they were able to do so in a way that protects the geologic formations that were causing these seismic events, or were alleged to have caused these seismic events. And that's the sort of level of granularity and specificity that only a state can do. EPA and the federal government, they have a lot of tools, but they're rather ham-fisted in that what they do, they have to do on a broad national basis. So I think the recognition should be that there's an experience and a case history where the states are doing this and doing it well. Local governments certainly have a role here, but I think folks have appropriately recognized that forcing oil and gas companies to operate under regulations that differ municipality by municipality, town by town, county by county, not only will significantly chill investment within the state, but it also detracts from having a cohesive energy policy in that you don't get to have the benefit of the expertise, and they're, a company operating in a state cannot, become expert in what the regulations are and sort of apply them uniformly.
Again, that was Wayne D'Angelo of Kelley Drye and the Fracking Insider. For more of his insight on hydraulic fracturing, be sure to visit frackinginsider.com. And for more curated commentary from the Lex Blog Network's thousands of authors, visit us at lxbn.com. Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks, Colin. Happy holidays.